Mark and Lisa's dreams for Brooksville went beyond the beautiful streets of the city. They wanted to be rich without having to work. In the afternoons when it was quiet, Mark and Lisa would often walk through the town square and sneak a peek at the fancy homes that lined the streets. As their desire for a high-class life grew, they told each other a secret about a quick way to get rich, and the idea started to grow with each day that went by. Mark and Lisa's living room had a cozy area that was lit by a single lamp. Mark and Lisa were close together, their faces lit up by the lamplight. They were really excited. They turned the small living room into a secret base for their big plan. Lisa's eyes showed the determination of someone who is navigating the dangerous waters of lying. Mark's eyes sparkled with desire. Mark looked over the notes in front of him with a frown. "Milani's family wealth is our golden ticket," he said. The light from the lamp made the shadows of his face stand out even more, making their secret talk more private. Lisa tapped repeatedly on the crumpled papers and said, "Mark, we just need to make sure she falls in love with you. The door to wealth will swing wide open once we get inside." Her voice had a cold edge to it, showing that she had the strategic mind behind the plan. As they thought about their plan in more detail, the night outside was filled with sounds of people unwinding and falling asleep. A game that would change Mark and Lisa's life began in Brooksville without anybody knowing. Over the next few days, Mark became the main character in the play that they were writing. His interactions with Milani were carefully planned out performances, with each moment being wisely planned. In the evening, as the sun went down, Mark took Milani to a cute cafe in the middle of Brooksville. The soft murmur of the violinist in the corner and the dim glow of fairy lights above created a romantic atmosphere that was perfect for the act that was going on. Mark leaned into Milani and said with a smile, "Milani, every moment with you feels like a page from a love story. You are the most interesting person I've ever met." When Milani heard his words, which sounded sincere, her heart started to race. Lisa, who was hiding in the dark, watched them talk with a mix of pleasure and deviousness. As they practiced their lines, conversations were whispered through the air. "You're the most amazing person I've ever met," Mark said. Milani didn't know it, but every compliment and sweet word was a brick carefully put in the foundation of the lie Mark and Lisa were making. The cafe turned into a stage for the fake dance of love as the night went on, and the town of Brooksville went about its normal, peaceful life without knowing what's going on. Milani, a romantic at heart, fell for Mark's carefully planned charade. As the light dimmed, he continued to show her love by touching her and speaking sweet words, drawing her into a world where love seemed to have no limits. Mark was a master at lying, and he knew how to play on Milani's feelings. With each word and touch was a stroke on the painting of their lie. In the town square one evening, he took her hand and said in a whisper, "Milani, you're the poetry my heart never knew it needed." Milani didn't know it, but the lies were getting tighter around her, making a complicated web that could break the image they had worked so hard to create. Her need for love and warmth made her unable to see the details of Mark's lie, leaving her stuck in a romantic fantasy that he had skillfully created. With sneaky looks and whispered vows, the illustration grew stronger, drawing Milani into a story that swayed between truth and fiction. At the same time that the act went well in public, Mark and Lisa's small apartment turned into a secretive workplace where they carefully put together the pieces of their big plan. Lisa looked through the many wedding ads that they spread out on the table, as if she was the secret wedding planner. She carefully wrote down every detail, from the flowers to the site. Her determination was clear, and it was what pushed them to move forward with their plan. The flat was filled with the sound of rustling papers, and Lisa's thoughts late into the night. As Mark did his part, he walked in with a smile and asked, "How's our masterpiece coming along, Lisa?" The relaxed tone of his words made her feel like she was about to hear something important. He looked over her shoulder at the stack of catalog pages. Lisa smiled and looked up. "Mark, it's going great. Our guests will be shocked." The quiet flat could feel her confidence, which showed how committed she was to the plan. People outside of Mark and Lisa's shared room had no idea about the complicated work that was going on inside. As the night went on, the secret plans got stronger. Eventually, everything was set for a big show. In all the luxury, Mark forgot about his guard for a moment and left his phone unattended and unlocked while he took a shower. The steam from the warm water filled the bathroom and made it feel peaceful. Milani, who was alone with her thoughts at the time, and found a string of texts that proved the bad plan. He didn't know about it. The words on the screen, the poisonous drafts, tore through the lie Mark had worked so hard to make. Milani's face flushed with shock and pain as she read each word. The weight of the truth set in as the hotel room became quiet. The luxury was now stained by the bitter taste of lying. Milani carefully hid how she felt, even though she was going through a storm inside. As she thought about how terrible Mark's betrayal was, the mirror reflected her determined look. That's when the desire for payback began to grow inside her. She made a silent promise to get back at Mark for betraying them and making their life together miserable. When the bathroom door opened, Milani put the phone away and tried to look calm. Mark didn't notice what was going on below the surface, so Milani gave him a fake smile that didn't show the struggle that was going on behind her eyes. "Enjoy your shower?" Milani asked. Her voice was steady, but there was something else in it that Mark couldn't pick up. "Let's make the most of our weekend," she added, a slight irony that her partner didn't pick up on. Mark had no idea that the fancy Harmony Springs Hotel, which was supposed to be a place to relax and unwind, had become the place where their carefully built front fell apart. Milani, driven by the pain of betrayal and her desire for payback, was quietly planning this reckoning in the background of their luxurious surroundings. Days turned into weeks without a hitch, and each passing second carved a deeper hole in Milani's elaborate lie. Now that she knew that Mark had betrayed her, she had to do a delicate dance to keep up appearances while hiding the storm of feelings raging inside her. During the quiet times between the smiles and muttered conversations, Milani tried to deal with the deep-seated anger. The weight of her secret was heavy, but she handled it with self-control. The town of Brooksville went about its normal business, unaffected by the complicated drama going on inside Mark's and Milani's lives. The quiet streets were full of sounds of everyday life, and no one could hear the quiet trouble that they had started in the heart of their small town. Mark, who didn't know what was going on, went through the days with a sense of confidence, and Milani worked hard to make sure it looked like they were getting along. It was like an unseen thread was being pulled tight between them, and it showed up in everything they did. Mark was so caught up in the illusion that he had no idea about the quiet fight going on in the background of their shared life. Behind every smile and look they shared, there was a battle going on. Milani, as the puppet master, was expertly pulling the strings of their fake relationship. Though the days went by, Mark and Milani's tension built up. The silence in the space they had shared held the unspoken promise of a coming revelation, a storm that would finally break free from the chains of lies. One night, as the sun went down, Milani and Mark were alone in their poorly lit living room. The warm colors of the sunset filled the room with a soft glow that made it feel like the calm before the storm. Milani knew that timing was very important, so she picked this time to take advantage of Mark's weakness. She walked up to him slowly and carefully, and you could barely hear her steps from the carpet below. The flickering candlelight made the resolution in her eyes stand out as she stood in front of Mark. She started a talk that would change the course of his deceitful plan with a calm voice. "Mark, you have to give this plan your full attention if you want it to work. You have to pay for this wedding, the decorations, and all of the other fancy things you've carefully planned out. Is that possible?" Even though she was calm, her voice had an air of authority to it that meant the balance of power in their relationship had changed. Mark sat on the edge of the couch. His eyes showed the greed that made him lose his temper. He had no idea how complicated Milani's game was. He couldn't see what might happen, because the promise of easy money had surrounded him like a seductive mist. He eagerly agreed, saying, "Yes, Milani, I can do that. You promised to pay me back twice as much when it's all over, right?" The weight of his words hung in the air, like a promise that would bind them and make the lie they were telling even stronger. Mark had no idea that this deal, which seemed harmless at first, would be the key part to their trickery. The room used to feel warm from the sunset, but now there was an unspoken tension. Neither knew what a complicated dance lay ahead. As the evening went on that dimly lit living room, they made a promise that would ring through their lives, setting the stage for a shocking truth that would change the lives of the liars. Mark kept hearing the promise of double payback, so Lisa jumped right into planning the wedding. As steady streams of beautiful flowers, fancy decorations, and delicious food arrived, the flat turned into a busy hub of activity. Each choice had an air of luxury to it, as if Lisa wanted to put on a show that would make the guests notice that the lie was really going on. When it started out as a means to an end, the event turned into proof of Mark's financial support for their fake relationship. Milani couldn't help but be amazed at how well her trick worked, as she placed the last order for a huge wedding cake covered in edible gold leaf. Illusion of greatness had become their best friend, as the truth about what was happening neared. As the morning sun rose and turned the sky pink and gold, Mark felt like he had won. He had carefully planned for this day to come, and it was here now. He was very excited. Sapphire Manor, the most luxurious place in town, smelled like fresh flowers as people waited for the big lie to happen. In its ornate rooms, Mark stood in front of the mirror in a well-tailored suit, a happy grin on his face. He whispered to himself, "Today is the day everything changes." As he looked at himself in the mirror, he had no idea that Milani's cleverness was about to turn the very basis of his plan into a mess. There was a mix of excitement and tension in the air. "Are you ready for this?" Milani asked with a knowing tone in her voice as she looked at Mark's image. He gave a confident nod, not noticing the storm that was coming. As soon as the ceremony started, the setting turned into a luxurious dream world. The guests were amazed by the fancy preparations. I didn't know what a dangerous game was going on. As of right now, Mark and Milani are married and took the dance floor for their first dance together. The couple floated across the floor as the beautiful music played in the background. Milani leaned in, but her voice was hard to make out over the music. It was a happy party. "Mark, I know everything," she whispered, and her eyes lit up with a mix of pride and satisfaction. Mark's face twisted in shock, and he stuttered. What are you talking about?" But Milani was determined, and she quietly told him how he had betrayed her. The dance floor, which used to be a place to celebrate, turned into a place of discovery. Milani added, her words cutting through the music. "Everything you said and did, I know everything." Mark was so caught up in his feelings that all he could do was watch as the big lie he had made fell apart right in front of his eyes. When Milani spoke, her words hung heavy in the air, and the truth came out like a flood. Mark was standing alone in the middle of the dance floor, and he felt bad about lying. He also had to deal with a big financial load. The event that used to be happy turned into a sad scene. The grandeur of the moment fell apart, and Mark's act fell apart when Milani told him the carefully protected secret. A $50,000 debt hung over him like a dark cloud, throwing a shadow over the pieces of his failed plan. "Mark, you thought you could trick everyone." The stunned quiet was broken by Milani's voice. "Now you'll have to face the consequences." Mark felt like the news was too much to bear, and he had to deal with the hard truth of the decisions he had made. Lisa stood on the edge of the dance floor, stunned by what was happening. As the truth came out, she felt sick to her stomach. It was revealed that she and Mark had planned a dance of lies, which showed how cruel their plan was and how much they had lied. Lisa felt guilty as she watched the scene play out. The scene in front of her was hard to handle. The dance floor was filled with the sound of broken vows. People who thought Milani and Mark were really in love could see the pain in their eyes. Lisa let out a heavy sigh as the dance floor turned into a battlefield for feelings. Lisa couldn't avoid the hard truth at this moment of revelation. Their elaborate mask had fallen apart, leaving her to deal with the effects of a plan that went horribly wrong. She ran out, leaving Mark alone to deal with the whole mess. Mark was left alone in the huge hall and had to face the harsh truth of his broken hopes and the growing debt that followed him around like a ghost. Because of what he did, the results were crushing him, killing the drive that had brought him to this place. Mark's feelings changed between regret and hopelessness in the quiet time after the reveal. When he first thought about the future, it looked bright, but now it was destroyed by the decisions he had made. The great plan that used to represent his hopes and dreams was now a plain reflection of the bad things that he could not avoid. As the hall was filled with the sound of broken hopes, Milani stepped away from the wreckage, her revenge exacted with surgical precision. The people who could now see what was going on watched as she left behind the shade of lies. Milani felt more powerful with each step she took away from the Sapphire Manor. The weight of her plan went away, and the hope of a new start took its place. Even though the people were hurt by the story of the lie, they talked about Milani's planned freedom. Milani whispered to herself, "Freedom tastes sweet." As she walked away from the broken pieces of their big lie, the road ahead was unclear, but it wasn't tied down by lies, and it was waiting for her with open arms. Citizens gathered in a calm circle as the sun set and cast a long shadow over Brooksville. People mentioned that the story of Mark, Lisa, and Milani was a warning about the dangers that people would face if they tried to get rich by betraying others. The lies that happened in the community left scars, and the people learned that trust is hard to fix once it's lost. The story of Mark and Lisa became a scary warning that lying to get rich often led people down dangerous paths with bad results they didn't expect. "Let this be a lesson to all," the town's elder said, and the audience could feel the weight of his expression in his words. There were still echoes of Mark and Lisa's failed plan in the air, a stark warning that people who looked for easy money often ended up on a path filled with betrayal and the bitter taste of broken dreams.